Hello and welcome to the Beach House 34 podcast. I'm your host, Christine Worth. I first want to thank all of the new subscribers and give a warm welcome back to all of our loyal listeners. If you listened to the last episode, Tom Bevel 3, you know that I've been dealing with a bit of a voice issue because of a cold, and it's sort of back, but I didn't want to miss scheduling an episode. So hopefully I'll be able to clean this audio up for you a little bit before it goes live so that it sounds all right for you. But just in case I'm not successful at that, I just wanted to let you know I'm so sorry. I was hoping this would be gone by now. We are continuing the coverage of the Darlie Routier trial, and for the past 3 episodes, we've heard the prosecution ask questions of Tom Bevel, an alleged Bloodstain analyst. Now, to hear all of his testimony, at least up to this point from the beginning, you want to go back to Tom Bevel 1, 2, and 3. In the last episode, the prosecution actually ended up finishing with their questioning, and now the defense begins theirs. What has happened is that once the prosecution had finished, the judge had given the jury a short break. And so the jury has left the room, and this is where we start right now. And at this point, what happens is Mr. Richard Mosty, as soon as the jury is out, asks, can we make a couple of inquiries? And the court says, oh, yes, all right. And the court then says, ladies and gentlemen, if we can have quiet in the courtroom, please. All right. Let the record reflect that these proceedings are being held outside of the presence of the jury, and all the parties of the trial are present. Mr. Hagler, you wanted to speak first, and then I am going to let you speak. Go ahead. Mr. Hagler of the defense team says, I wanted to, by the agreement between the parties, we do have a running objection to all of the testimony of this witness regarding his expert opinion testimony. And also, that objection further applies to the exhibits that were the T-shirt exhibits that were used as a demonstration and attempt by this witness to reconstruct the acts, the so-called acts that constituted the offense. The court says, you do. Mr. Hagler says, thank you. The court then says, thank you, Mr. Mosty. And at this point, Mr. Mosty then begins with a voir dire examination of the witness. And he begins to question Mr. Bevel. 2 inquiries of Mr. Bevel. One is, or the state, whomever, what are the additional notes that you have taken, and can I have a copy of them? The additional notes would be, for example, coming here since Sunday, adding to my time sheet. The additional notes would be identifying my TB8 is identified by somebody else's other means of identification, understanding what those are, writing them down, and then putting what the results of the examination is. And that is, may I get a copy of those, please? They are right here. Yes, sir. And the second inquiry is, did you tape record our meeting in Oklahoma City? No, sir, I didn't. Did you? No, sir, I didn't. The court then says, all right, thank you. Is that it? Okay, thank you. We're on break. And Mr. Mosty says, will you make me a copy of that? Mr. Greg Davis says, yes, in the back. And at this point, the recess was officially taken. And then after this 10 or 15 minute break, whatever it was, the court then says, all right, bring the jury back in. So the jury is brought back into the courtroom, and everything is resumed on the record in open court. The court then says, all right, let the record reflect that all parties in the trial are present and the jury is seated. Mr. Mosty. And then Mr. Mosty of the defense team begins his cross-examination. Mr. Bevel, during the break, I got, I guess, an update on your notes. If I understand that the sum total of all of the notes that you took in this case consists of 15 pages, I don't know the number. That's probably accurate. Okay. And of those, some of those were sketches provided to you by Rowlett, were they? Or sketches that you then took notes on? Yes, there were some sketches. And to be honest with you, I am not sure who provided. That is the diagrams of the residence. Well, while we're doing this, Why don't we cover this so we will be certain of it? I'll substitute my last page for the new last page you just gave me. Okay? Let me make sure my numbers are right. And just to be clear, I will just show you. Does this appear to be what I am sending? Showing you is a fax you sent to me. There are 2 pages of number 9 in there, in the new one. Yes, sir, they are. Okay? That is 14 pages, which is the sum total of your entire file, the sum total of my personally generated file. Okay? It is considerably bigger than that, but not what I generated. Okay? Well, what I'm talking about is every note that you took, so you could document things and so that you could identify and remember. That is included in these 14 pages. To the best of my knowledge, yes, sir. Okay, and all of that, count with me, if you will. 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of those pages are a sketch on which you did some notes. Yes, sir. 2 are impressions. Yes, sir. 1 is your timesheet with some additional notes. Yes, sir. And then the other one here is the timesheet again. And then there are 1, 2, 3 pages of notes. And then 1, a sketch of a knife. Yes, sir. So 3, actually in 3 pages, are really all of the notes that you did on your own pad that are written documentation that is correct. Okay. Is there any other kind of, I guess the word written documentation seems to confuse me here. I thought that documents are writings. Well, I also consider photographs taken of evidence a document. Maybe that is incorrect. I don't know. All right. These are all the pieces of paper. And then there's some photographs. Yes, sir. Now let's cover a little bit about exactly what you did. You first went to Dallas. I believe it was on September 11th. Yes, sir. At that time, had you seen anything? I did have some photographs prior to arriving to September the 11th, which was, let's see, there was several photographs of the gown that was being worn, which was the t-shirt. And I believe what I had was also a few of the autopsy photographs, but that was about the extent of what I had. And did you keep those or did you give them back to somebody? Sir, do you have a file that has those photos in it? I don't believe that I do. I am not sure whether I gave those back. I don't believe that I have them. No. Well, did you bring your file down here? Yes, sir. Okay. And you have looked at it before? Certainly. So you would remember if those photographs were in it, wouldn't you? Well, I don't believe they are in there. No. All right. And you had not seen any of the crime scene photographs? The original photographs that were sent? There is a possibility that some of those could have been in there. And I'm sorry, I can't identify as to which time I got all the photographs. I don't know. You didn't take any notes to identify photo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? No, sir. And didn't take any notes to identify this photo that was taken on June 6th or June 8th or what date it was taken? Well, I didn't take any of these. So did you take any notes in your files so that you can, so that you can go back and say, such and such photo on 6/6, I saw this? No, sir, I did not. Mr. Bevel, you have testified hundreds of times? Yes, sir. Thousands? No, sir. How many hundreds of times do you reckon you have testified? Probably something around 200 or more. I don't know. How many lawyers do you reckon have cross-examined you? Well, I would say in each one of those instances, I have been cross-examined. Any lawyer more than once? Yes, sir. So, would it be near 200 lawyers who have examined you? And you're just simply talking about trial, not depositions or anything else? Let's just talk about trials first. We will move on. Okay? I'm talking about when you're sitting in court, testifying with a defense lawyer cross-examining you. Well, again, I don't have an exact number. Each time that I have testified, certainly there has been either one or more, defense attorneys that has had an opportunity to cross-examine me. And in addition, in depositions or out-of-court statements, and of course, those were under oath, weren't they? The depositions certainly were, okay? And how, in addition to the approximately 200 times you have testified in court, how many depositions have you given? I'm just guessing, but I would say probably 10. Okay. So it would be fair to say that you have heard pretty much everything there is to hear in terms of cross-examination? No, I doubt that. You doubt that? Yes, sir. Okay. But you are an experienced testifier. You would agree with me on that, wouldn't you? Yes, sir. Let's talk a little bit about then, moving on from your September 11th, let's make sure we've covered your September 11th visit. Yes, sir. You met, and did you look at photographs? Yes, sir. Were those the crime scene photographs? Those were included in the photographs. Yes, sir. Let's talk about those photographs. Was there any of those photographs that were identified, for instance, with a log? They would say, this is this item? No, sir. Okay. How were the photographs explained to you? Verbally. By a combination of different people at various times. I would say the majority of the time it was by Mr. Davis. Okay. And he would say, this is a photograph of kitchen counter or whatever it might be. Yes, sir. Was the man who took the photographs there? No, sir. Mr. Main was not at this meeting? No. Were the photographs arranged in any kind of order or sequence? Some of them were, yes, and some weren't? Yes, sir. Were some of them taken on June 6th? Yes, sir. Were some of them taken on June 8th? I do not know the dates of the various photographs were taken. Because you didn't take any notes? I didn't take the photographs. Nor did you take any notes to say that this is a photograph of the vacuum cleaner taken on 6/8? I did not take any notes of that. No, sir. Can you tell me today whether or not the photographs you saw were taken on the 6th or the 8th? I cannot. All right. You looked at these photographs at Mr. Davis's office? Yes, sir. And Mr. Davis was present. Who else was present? At various times, there were different people. It would depend upon if we're talking about September the 11th. September 11th, okay? And you knew by that time that Mrs. Routier had already been indicted in 2 separate cases, didn't you? I don't know that I was aware it was 2 separate cases. You knew she had already been indicted? Been indicted? Yes, sir. Other than looking at the photographs, what else did you do? Did you, at that time, look at the shirt? Yes, sir. Anything else? There were a number of things that was there. And I can't remember on the 11th or 12th, I looked at the vacuum cleaner. And I'm not sure whether that was originally looked at Mr. Davis's office or Dallas County, or if that was actually at Swift's. You were down there 2 days? Yes, sir. All right. So you looked at the photographs. You looked at the t-shirt. You looked at the vacuum cleaner. Anything else? There was a number of police reports, autopsy, medical records in reference to treatment at the hospital, a large number of statements that were made by various people, such as, excuse me, I just want you to describe for me generically what you saw. I don't want to go into the details of what some of these things said, as they may be hearsay. Okay? So you saw autopsy material, reports, statements? Yes, sir. Anything else? At that particular meeting, I think that pretty well encompasses the primary items that were looked at. Okay. And you had not had those reports before the meeting? No, sir. Did you get copies of them? I got copies of some of them. What I did the evening or the afternoon actually, that I left, I went to a motel. I borrowed at that time, fairly complete copy that the DA's office had of the various reports that had been collected. And I read them that night while in the hotel. And then did you maintain copies of them, or did you give them back to the district attorney? I gave those back to the district attorney, and subsequently requested copies of some of it, such as some of the statements, some of the autopsy findings, and some of the original police officers' reports. Okay, and was this a fair stack that you read? I would say it was considerable, yes. 6 inches high? Well, in a 3-ring binder, and I'm guessing that it would be about like that. Witness then gestures to show. Okay, similar to the binder like this that I have here? Yes, sir. However, considerably thicker. The pages, it holds considerably more than that. A lot more materials than what I am showing you here. And of course, some of those included photographs. Okay, they were in a binder too. They were in a manila envelope about the size of an 8x10 that was included in the, I don't believe that they were attached. No. So you had a notebook larger than this one, and a manila envelope of photographs? Photographs, yes, sir. All right. And you sat and read them in your motel room that night? Yes, sir. Did you take any notes of all of that documentation? Did you take any notes whatsoever? I don't believe so. Now then, you asked for certain of the documents you had seen to be sent to you? Yes, sir. And I guess you just called upon your memory when you got back to Oklahoma to say, I want this and that? Well, no. Upon meeting on the following morning on the 12th, I expressed some of the copies that I would like to have. Okay. Subsequently, upon getting back to Oklahoma, they were sent. All right. And I guess when you did that, Mr. Davis took some notes about which ones you wanted? Yes, sir. Or somebody did? Well, let me back up. I think I actually wrote down and handed him a piece of paper stating, these are some of the items I would like to have copies of. Okay. Now, are those presently in your file? I believe they are. Yes. Do you have your file up there with you? Yes, sir, I do. May I see it? Yes. Now, I note in your file that there are a number of photographs now. Yes, sir. When did you get those? I have had those, collecting some of those from September the 11th. Some of them were given to me on October the 1st, and there may have been some since October 1st, but I believe that either all or the majority of them had been received prior to that. Okay, I'm not going to belabor this right now. Maybe during the break or something, we will identify what is in there. Yes, sir. Okay, on the 11th, did you express your opinions about this case to Mr. Davis? Some of them. Did you look at the carpet at that time in the September trip? September the 12th, I did. Okay. And it was rolled out for you out at the, where? PD? Yes, sir. And then, is there anything else we have not covered on that trip? At least in general terms? In general terms, I think that we have covered everything with one exception. That would be making imprints of the vacuum wheels while it swifts. Okay. And you had adequate time on those 2 days to do what you felt like you needed to do? No, sir. To get, did you want to stay over and do some more, or no, there was additional days that additional work was done. And what I am saying is that if we had stopped then, it certainly was not adequate. And certainly I didn't mean to imply that. But for whatever the purpose of your trip on that first trip, you had adequate time to do all of your initial evaluations and figure out what kind of follow-up you wanted to do. Yes, sir. And then you came back on the 1st of October, October the 1st. Yes, sir. And that was 2 days? That was the 1st and 2nd. That's correct. Okay. And during that trip, did you again look at evidence? Yes, sir. Look at the carpet again? No, sir. Not on that trip? No, sir. What did you do? Look at the photographs? Photographs? There were basically a conference that was given to go over. Excuse me, I am not interested in the details of what happened. I'm just interested in the general description. I don't want to know, a report that said, I just want to hear the description of what it was. You had a conference? Yes, sir. Did you again look at the photographs? Yes, sir. Did you again look at the t-shirt? Yes, sir. By that time, you had received some reports? Yes, sir. The majority of the reports that I have in the file was received by September the 19th. And then your next trip was a one-day trip to Dallas on November the 26th. Is that right? Yes, sir. And that concludes all of your trips to Dallas. 3 trips? Yes, sir. And in those trips, did you have adequate time to do whatever you needed to do? At those locations? Yes, sir. I'm curious, why didn't you do that carpet experiment in October? We didn't. Well, the carpet that I had looked at, it was discussed on what was found at that particular point. In order to do it, I could have used synthetic blood, which I had with me. I did not have whole human blood, and it was my feeling that we should use whole human blood in order to do the experimentation. Arrangements had to be made in order to do that, and that was at a later time. Swifts couldn't get you whole human blood in October? I'm sure that they could have, certainly, but they prefer if they have a little bit of advance notice, as opposed to saying on the telephone, get me some blood out at such and such a place now. It just didn't occur to you before you went down there in October to run experiments on the carpet and to make arrangements for it? When? In September? Are you referring to September 12th? No, I'm talking about the October trip. I'm sorry. Let me restate that. It didn't occur to you when you were going down there on your second trip in October to make arrangements in advance to do an experiment on that carpet? Well, I'm not sure that I can state that it didn't occur to me. It was not set up to be done then. Well, if it occurred to you, you didn't follow up on it? How about that? That would be okay. All right. Mr. Bevel, I have quite a number of areas to cover, and I'm going to more or less try to cover them in the order you did, so we can go through them. If you think that I am getting off from one time to another or something, or we get confused, then stop me and we will get back so that you and I are clearly talking about the same time. Fair enough? Yes, sir. Let's talk about the vacuum cleaner right here. Yes, sir. You observed this vacuum cleaner, of course. Now it's been cleaned, has it not? It's been cleaned? Yes. I have not inspected it since it's been cleaned. If it has, I don't know. You said, did you not, that there was a smear on the handle? Yes, sir, that is correct. Whereabouts? It is basically the top portion of the handle, and more of it was to the right side, and there is actually traces of blood around the entire area of the handle. Okay, so like that, sort of? It could be. Can you say whether or not the hand was this way or that way? It could be either way, I can't say. And can you say whether or not that smear came from a hand that had a glove on it, a latex glove, or not? I cannot. You can't make that determination, can you? No, sir. Okay. But that was the only blood on the handle area? Yes, sir. And you looked at the vacuum cleaner, did you tell me, on the 11th? It was either the 11th or the 12th. I believe I saw it on the 11th, but the imprint of the wheel was actually done on the 12th. Okay, first trip, let's just call it the first trip. Okay. And at that time you looked at the wheels, the back wheels, I guess. I looked at them. Yes, sir. Were you able to observe blood on them? To actually visually see blood? No. Could not see blood on the wheels? No. Okay, but all these other places you could actually visibly, let me correct that because I am mistaken. On what you would refer to as the part of the wheel that would come in contact with the floor, no, I did not see any blood. As you get up to the areas that would be to the side of the wheel, there was some traces of blood that you could see visually. What I was thinking of was the actual tread portion. Well, you're correct, because that is really what I was asking you. I was not very accurate in my question. The part that is now taped? Yes, sir. You were not able to see blood? That's correct. And did you carefully, of course, look at the whole wheel? I did. Careful not to contaminate it or knock off a blood flake or something like that? Certainly. Did you do it with finger or did you do it with something like it was done with a gloved finger, basically? Okay. A latex gloved finger? Yes, sir. Okay. But you were able to see blood on, am I saying this right? On the side of the wheel? There were some areas of blood that was visible. Again, we're not talking about a lot of blood, but there was some areas there was visible blood. Okay. Now, if this vacuum were rolled through blood like you have described, yes, sir, wouldn't you expect to see at least some blood on the wheel part? I would certainly look for it. Yes, sir. And you did? And I did. Because you expected to see it. Well, I certainly looked for it because there is a good indication that it could certainly be there. That is the reason we didn't stop by just looking. Okay, all right. Then you told us that you saw what you call furrows in how many locations? I'm sorry, sir. What? Furrows. Didn't you mention the word furrow in there? You're talking about the floor? Yes. Yes, sir. Okay. In how many locations? The one that is visible without the amido is in front of the sink area, and that would be to the left. There are additionally, let's see, 1, 2, at least 3, possibly 4, not furrows, but tracks that would be consistent with the width of the wheels of the vacuum cleaner. And that would be, if you are looking at the sink, that would be to the right from where the first one that we're indicating is. Okay, so am I right that there is the one that we will call the furrowed one? Yes, sir. Then there may be 4 others, 3 to 4 others. Yes, sir. That would be to the right of that one. And of course, you can't tell us 3 to 4 because you don't have any notes, do you? No, but we can easily look at the photographs and make that determination. Okay, I want to talk to you about the photographs in just a minute as soon as I finish this. Okay, so there is one, if I am at the sink, there is one that is sort of here on my left and some others that are more or less in front of me, or are they scattered around? Well, it depends on your definition of scattered, I guess. Well, then let me withdraw that question. How far apart, in feet or inches or whatever measurement you are comfortable with, were these? I did not measure the distance from the one that is to the left to the others that are over. What I actually did was to measure the diameter of the wheel. Okay, well, give me an estimate of the one that was on the left to the others that were on the right. How far is that? Again, by looking at the photographs, I think we could be more accurate. However, my best estimation without looking at the photographs is going to be within, well, certainly less than 3 feet. All right. And is that the other area that you call it to the right? Are those sort of closer together or are they also spread out? No, there is 2 of them that are very close and another one that is somewhat over from the 2 that are close. And I believe that there is another one that is again separate from that. Okay, so it was your opinion that the vacuum cleaner was picked up between each of those? Well, not necessarily between each of those, but certainly between the ones that are further apart. Okay, and did you demonstrate how that was done the other day, yesterday? I just did a demonstration of where I said that the vacuum cleaner would have had to have been picked up. Come down and repeat that demonstration for me the way you did yesterday. Okay? And at this point, the witness gets down from the witness stand and approaches the jury rail. And then the proceedings are resumed. And he responds by saying, we talked about it being rolled, right? And then going from one location to another and then being rolled again. Okay, thank you. You can go ahead and have a seat. Okay. And then the witness goes back to the witness stand and the questioning is resumed. You put your hand right here, didn't you? I don't know. You don't recall? I simply grabbed it and moved it. I don't know where I exactly placed my hand. Mr. Mosey then says, could the record reflect that's where he put his hand, Your Honor? And the court says, well, I think the jury saw where he put his hand. The jury is instructed. Mr. Mosey says, I did. I saw it. And then the court continues to remember the testimony and view the evidence as they see it and remember it. Mr. Mosey says, I saw it. He then continues. And there was no blood at this location, was there? Not that I recall. No, sir. Okay. And you wouldn't call me a tall man, would you? About my height. Okay. I would have to pick that up like that. And then my arm I would have to lift my arm to get it off the ground. I would have to get my arm up parallel to the floor, wouldn't I? Parallel? No. Pretty much, this is part of my arm. The way you have it is parallel. You don't have to do that. Okay, well then, all right. Well, is that about as close as I can get? Without touching the floor, is that what you're saying? Yes. That is going to be pretty close. Yes, sir. All right. So if somebody is going to pick it up, you would expect them to pick it up a little higher than that, wouldn't you? I would. Okay. If somebody is going to pick that up and then move it 3 feet, yes, sir. Okay, but they can't. Let's see. It's got to be like this, doesn't it? Because the front wheels are not touching. To move it, why do any of the wheels have to touch? Well, you found no evidence of the front wheels being in blood, did you? No, sir, I'm not clear on your question. Well, you are the one that said it's picked up, I guess, straight up, or would you say it was picked up like this? I have no way of knowing. All right, it would be pretty hard to pick it up like that, wouldn't it? Well, you just did it. Yeah, and look at my position. I don't think that is difficult. No, sir. You don't think that is difficult? You think that is how a lady of Mrs. Routier's height would have picked up that vacuum cleaner? I didn't say that. I simply said I didn't believe that that is difficult. All right. That would be difficult, wouldn't it? By holding it out in front of you, it's more like a weight. Yes, sir. Okay. And of course, the main smear that you saw on the handle was on the right side, wasn't it? There was more of the blood that I saw on the right side, but it continued all the way around. Okay. And so if somebody picked it up like this, for instance, you would expect to see more blood on the left side. If that hand is bloody, okay, but it's clear to you that between those marks on the floor, that vacuum cleaner was picked up and moved to another location. In my opinion, it would have had to have been. Yes, sir. Okay. And that would be consistent with, and you found no evidence of the front wheels anywhere rolling? Okay. As far as the front wheels rolling through blood, no, sir. Okay. Well, I am going to get to the floor in a minute. Let's go to the utility room. And you first went in this house on November 26th? That's correct, sir. How long were you there that day? I would say approximately, well, with time out for lunch, it would have been total cumulative time, somewhere approximately 5 hours. Okay. And you brought the whole blood this time, or did somebody else bring it? Mr. Lynch brought it. Okay. And what areas did you inspect of the linoleum before you were doing your experiments? Well, basically, there is a kind of like a closet. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but as you are in the kitchen, there's some doors that will fold. I looked at that area. Would you call that a pantry? Could be a pantry. I'm not really sure what it is. Okay. The linoleum that is to the outside of that, or what appeared to be the dining room, and then toward the utility room and simply the area in front of the sink and surrounding an island that is in the sink. I want to show you State's Exhibit 10. Can you see it all right from where you are? Yes, sir. Okay. And are you saying that I am pointing to that has the doors that open, the doors that open, that is what you called a closet of some kind. Closet, pantry, I'm not sure what it is. Okay, so you looked in front of that area? Yes, sir. And on the kitchen sink side? Yes, sir. And in the utility room? Yes, sir. Or have you covered that yet? Yes, sir, I did. Okay. And that is where you were looking at the linoleum? Yes, sir. Okay. At that time, all of the furniture had been moved out of the house? That is correct, sir. And was there evidence of sort of the ordinary trash that people sometimes leave behind when they have moved out? Paper, things like that? At various places in the house, yes. And in fact, in those areas, I would say there was some, yes. It had not been cleaned up, in other words. That's correct. And gone back and swept or vacuumed or any of that stuff? That is correct. But it was obvious. Did you go out to the garage? Yes, sir. And it was obvious that all of the furniture had been moved out of the house? Yes, sir. It sort of had a typical look of a house that had been moved out of? Yes, sir. And how did you conduct this inspection of the linoleum floor? Just basically visually. No photographs? Well, at that time, no. No notes? That's correct. Well, let me back up again here. We have notes comparing. Well, that was not done there. I'm sorry. I was about to talk about the measurement of the wheels, but that actually was done at a later time. I'm sorry. I'm talking about your notes. That's what I'm talking about also. You didn't take any notes at that particular point? No, sir. With respect to what you saw on the linoleum floor? That is correct. Okay. How long did you just look at the floor? Well, at various times, you are looking at the floor, then doing other things, and then looking at another area on the floor. It's difficult to give you an actual time frame. That was a silly question. All of the blood was dried while I was there. This is 6 months, nearly? Yes, sir. After that? Yes, sir. And you, of course, have no way of knowing how many people have been going in and out of that house. I have no way of knowing that. And if I walk through there and I drag my feet on a spot of blood, it's dusty by then, isn't it? Certainly. And I just walk through, I could kick it and destroy a pattern, couldn't I? You certainly could. If I had a box of furniture or pots and pans, say pots and pans, if I had a box of cleaning materials and I took them out of something and I put them in a box and I kicked the box across the floor or moved it while I packed another box, I could destroy dusty blood, couldn't I? Certainly. And there are innumerable ways that could have happened. Certainly. So then, if I understand then, the next thing that you did, you then started on the experiment. Well, we are going to have a problem here because I don't think that is experiments that we are doing. Well, I expected we would have a problem about that. Tell me what they were. Mr. In your description of what is this? Yes, sir. I'm not asking you how we did it. We will get to that in a minute. What is it you were calling it? I was calling it a demonstration to show what my verbal opinion was as to what a knife would look like if it was bloody and fell in that area. And at Mr. Davis's request, we did a demonstration with a bloody knife impacting so that we could show it. And you used the word, I'm sure, demonstration. I very well may have used an experiment, but when we start talking about scientific experiments, that certainly does not qualify. There is no stretch of imagination that could call this a scientific experiment, is there? I agree with you. Beyond any doubt, there is no, I agree with that. Because in a scientific experiment, you first do a hypothesis. Yes, sir. And then you take out all of the variables, and then you test your hypothesis with each one of the variables. In this event, this time you formed your opinion first. I gave an opinion as to what I would look for. Mr. Davis wanted to know, instead of just verbally what that would look like. He wanted to know what would it actually look like through a demonstration. And of course, this is after Mrs. Routier has been indicted. Yes, sir. And you have come to your opinion, and then you conduct a demonstration that supports your opinion. That creates a visual aid so that instead of just verbally talking about it, you can look at the photographs and see or compare that to the verbal statement. And you have demonstrated how you did that or testified a little bit about it. And you said that you dipped the knife in blood on both sides, right? Yes, sir. Is this sort of a low pan? Well, yes, it was. To where you can get the whole knife blade in there. Not dipping it down that way, no. You have to lay it basically on its side. And actually what I had to do was to get some of the blood almost to a scooping motion to where it would run over the knife. Okay, so you put it in till you get actually blood on the handle. There was probably some blood that got on the handle, yes. And on, what do you call that part of a knife? That is a good question. I don't know. All right. How about we call it the backside? That will work for me. All right. You got blood on the backside? Yes, sir. And you, of course, testified that that is one of the areas that can be a cast-off source. Yes, sir. And you dipped the blood. Did you get your finger? Did you do this with one hand or two hands? Do you remember? At various times, I probably used one, and another time I probably used two. Because I just found myself sort of using two, but I don't know that that is. Most of the time, I believe that the other hand was holding on to the container so that I didn't spill or knock it over. I believe most of the time it was done with one hand. Did you actually get blood on your gloves? Yes, sir, I did. Okay. So you got that knife fully bloody on both sides, right? Yes, sir. And then you dropped it from what you call waist high? Well, you are missing one part. I'm sorry, I'll add it. You held it up? Yes, sir. And until as you said, for all practical purposes, it had stopped dripping? Right. The continuous drip on the end of the knife had ceased. I said those words correctly, didn't I, for all practical purposes? You probably did. Then you took it and you dropped it like that? Well, there it would have hit the pan, so I had to turn. All right, I have turned, okay, and you dropped it like that? Yes, sir. You didn't decide to drop it like that? At that location, no. Okay. Of course, we don't know because there is no protocol for any of these demonstrations that says how you dropped it, nor do we know how it dropped originally. Yeah, that is a very good point, isn't it? Sure. And that undermines the whole of your demonstration, doesn't it? No, sir. You don't know if someone dropped it like that? I don't know that. That would be a different pattern in all likelihood. It also should, in that tile, have had the tip point demonstrated as impacting it. Okay, so you forgot to tell us that earlier. You looked in the linoleum for a place where a knife had stuck in the linoleum? Matter of fact, I did. Yes, sir. But you didn't mention that earlier, did you? I wasn't asked. Of course, you didn't take any notes about that, did you? Not specifically. No, sir. Okay. Now, how did you decide to drop it like that as opposed to like that? Well, at various times it was dropped differently. Okay. Once while running. Yes, sir. Did you ever drop it onto a carpet? Yes, sir. Did you ever drop it onto a rug on the linoleum? No, sir, I did not. Didn't do that, did you? No, sir. There were multiple rugs in this kitchen, don't you? In the kitchen, yes, sir. And in the utility room door, there was one, don't you? I don't remember that. Okay. On Exhibit 10, is there not a rug depicted in front of the utility room door? If we're talking about in front of the utility room door, That may be accurate. I don't recognize just what that is, but that may be accurate. I don't think anybody is going to swear to the scale of where that rug is. If they are, I have not heard them yet. Well, but earlier, I understand your question to be in the utility room. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be that. I'm just saying, at any time, did you take a flowered rug and drop the knife on it? A flowered rug like this one and drop the knife on it? I never did that. Did you tell us yesterday that there were 8 to 10 of these experiments? I believe that is accurate. Okay. And someone was in charge of the photography? Well, in charge, there was somebody who was taking photographs. Okay. Were you directing them? I requested that some photographs be taken. I did not direct them on each and every photograph. No, sir. Okay. And of the 8 to 10 times you say that you dropped the knife in different ways? Yes, sir. On State's Exhibit 125, which shows test 1 and 2, can you tell the jury whether or not these were the experiments where you dropped the knife running? They were not. Can you tell whether that they were the ones that you dropped the knife at waist high? They are from waist high. They are from waist high? Yes. How is the knife held? Flat, like I was holding it? On either one of those, I can't tell you whether it was held upright or flat. I don't know that. Can you tell me whether it was even held the same? Can you tell me that between these two tests? I can't positively state that, no. And if you had some notes, we would be able to know that, wouldn't we? If this was a scientific experiment, you would have notes. Well, a demonstration is to, did you say aid your testimony? Verbal testimony, as to my opinion, as to what you would have, in this instance, if a bloody knife was to fall to the floor. Mr. Bevel, my question was simply, you described this demonstration as something that would aid the jury. Is that what you thought? Yes, sir. In understanding your testimony? Yes, sir. You don't think it might aid the jury if we knew exactly how you conducted these demonstrations? Don't you think that would aid the jury? There is a possible, I think that is a simple yes or no. Would that aid the jury or not? Mr. Greg Davis then says, I'm sorry, please, can the witness be allowed to answer the question? The court says, let the witness answer the question. Let's ask our questions once and move on to another area. Mr. Mosty then says, I'll ask it again. The court says, thank you. Mr. Mosty then again says, do you think it would be of some aid to the jury to understand how you conducted tests 1 and 2? I think the jury understands how I conducted those tests. Okay. The court then says, thank you. Next question. Mr. Mosty says, Your Honor, I have got a lot more questions on this subject. The court says, oh, I know you do. Just ask the next question. Mr. Mosty then says, I'll just try not to ask that one again. The court says, all right, thank you. Mr. Mulder says, we're not going to ask the same one again, Judge. The court says, all right, please don't. All right, thank you. Mr. Mosty then begins his questioning again. Were all of the experiments photographed? Were all of them on the linoleum, just on the linoleum? Were all of the 8 to 10 experiments photographed? Were all of the knife drops in that particular area photographed? On linoleum. On linoleum, I don't know. I was not taking the photographs, nor do I have a photographic log. Were more than these 4 taken? Yes, sir. Okay. How many more? I don't know. And I guess we will never know? Well, I'm sure that the prosecution has those and you can request them. I don't know. Indeed, they do. And indeed, I'm going to show them to you. Let me hand you a file and you tell me how many photographs in there you can identify as being on the linoleum. Okay, there are 4 in here. And with the 4 photographs that are there, that would be a total of 8 photographs. Okay, where were those 4 toward the top? Yes, sir. Have I pulled out the 4 photographs that are of the linoleum testing? Yes, sir. So now we think maybe there were 8 photographs taken? We have identified 8 that is here, so I assume that is correct. Well, I'll represent to you that those are the photographs that were handed to me yesterday evening. Yes, sir. Okay, do you have any reason to doubt that? I certainly don't. So, of the 8 experiments, there are 8, or was it 8 to 10 experiments, approximately 8? 8 to 10 occurrences of dropping. I still don't identify them as experiments. I'm sorry, I apologize. Yes, sir. Are we comfortable with 8 to 10? Somewhere in that range. Yes, sir. Of these events? Yes, sir. Okay. And on 1 and 2, test 1 and 2, of course, we don't know that these are tests 1 and 2, do we? We don't know which order those were photographed. No, sir. It could have been tests 9 and 10. I don't know. It could be. And nobody knows. Well, I disagree with that. Who does? If you take the roll of photographs, they are numbered, and I doubt that number 8 was taken before number 1. Okay. But you have never seen that roll of photographs? I have not. The negatives? I have not seen the negatives. All right. Who do you reckon put these together? Test 1 with test 1. Somebody in the DA's office. I don't know. You didn't? No, sir. And you didn't take any photographs? I did not. And you didn't take any notes or make any sketches of number 1 so that we could see, in fact, that 125A goes with 125B? You can look at them and tell. And the same thing of 126A and 126B. You can look at those and recognize those as being the same. In 126A and B, what is all this dark stuff back there? I believe that is fingerprint powder, but I do not know conclusively what it is. Okay, I thought it was dirt. It could be. That could obliterate a bloody print that was under it, couldn't it? If the item that was previously above that was missing blood got there, yes. Okay. Now, Mr. Bevel, this may be a little hard, but let me see if I can do it. I'm going to need some exhibits. And Mr. Mosty then says, what's my next number? And then he continues, Mr. Bevel, I'm going to hand you what has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 54. Does that appear to be one of the photographs that you just took out of the state's file? Yes, sir. I want you to look at 54 next to 126A. Yes, sir. Now you tell me, is that a photograph of the same event? Yes, sir. That is simply a different distance. Okay. So a minute ago, when we talked about these photographs being of the other experiments, that is incorrect, isn't it? I said that they were, I'm sorry, you didn't say the word experiments. That is not what I'm disagreeing with. What did you say these were 4 photos of? 4 photographs depicting the knife being dropped onto the... I did not say that those were not the same. I just said there was a total of 8 pictures. Okay. So how many of the experiment/demonstrations were photographed? We would have to lay them out here and then I could tell you. Okay. Mr. Bevel, it's good practice, is it not, when you are photographing bloodstains? Mr. Bevel, is it good practice, is it not, when you are photographing blood spatter or bloodstains, to place a scale or a ruler or an object of known size in the photograph, isn't it? That is not a bad idea. You recommend it, don't you? It depends on what you're going to be doing. Let me show you 55, 56, and 57. Are these the other 3 photographs from the state's file? Yes, sir, they are. Okay. Now, let me get this easel, Mr. Bevel. I think this might be easier for the jury. The court then says, all right, would someone please help Mr. Mosty get that out there? All right. Mr. Mosty continues. All right, Mr. Bevel. Would you maybe step down here? Yes, sir. Let's go with 55. Can you tell me whether or not 55 matches up with one of the state's 125AB or 126AB? Okay, it does not. Okay. Let's put it down here. What about 56? Is that a part of 126B? No, sir. It does not match the 4 that is up there. Okay, so 55 and 56 do not match. What about 57? let me ask you this question. Do 55 and 56 match each other? Well, let me do one thing at a time. Okay. This does not match the 4 photographs on the poster. Okay. Now, do either 55, 56, or 57 match each other? Are they in the same demonstration? Okay. Your prior question, 55 and 56, do not match each other. Okay. How can you tell that from that distance? Well, by looking at the patterns. Well, you are talking about how big are these? What is this area? How long is that ruler? Can you tell that? It's a 6-inch. All right. So what is represented in that area is 12 inches by 18 inches, maybe in the whole photograph, somewhere in that range. Now, 55 and 56 don't match. Does 57 match either 55 or 56? No, sir. Okay. So now, if I'm right, we have photographs of 5 of the demonstrations. That's correct. 125A and B is one, and 54 and 126A are the same thing. Yes, sir. Different? Distances. And so on the right side, test 2, there are 3 photographs of it. And then on, for lack of a better phrase, test 3, 4, and 5, that isn't going to work. 3, 4, and 5 are shown in the ones at the bottom. Yes, sir. Okay. Now, I am curious why these photographs are all done differently. For instance, in the 126 series, you take 2 of the knife at rest and 1 after. Am I right? Well, I didn't take them, but there are 2 photographs taken of the knife at rest and 1 after it. Was it important to you to document this? What was important to me was to be able to supplement my verbal testimony through showing what I am talking about if a bloody knife hits the floor. Was it important to you to document what you were doing through photography? Through photography to show examples of what I am talking about, yes. But you didn't say to the photographer, here is what I want you to do. I want you to take a photograph of the knife at rest. Then we're going to pick it up. I want a photograph of that. Then I'm going to put a scale on it. I want a photograph of that. You didn't do any of that, did you? I did not. You left it up to, what's this guy's name? I don't know who it was. Was it Officer Maine? I don't know who it was. Did you leave it to Officer Maine's discretion as to what photographs should be done? Well, I guess I did, because I did not point out specific occurrences to photograph. And of course, from Officer Maine's photographs, we can see there is no consistency of what he did. Is there? Oh, I totally disagree. You do? Yes, sir. Okay. This one has 2 photographs of the knife and 1 of the floor. What is consistent is that in any one of these photographs, I can look at the various distances and compare the blood stains that are there, and I have no problem with what is shown. You see, Mr. Bevel, I know that, but that was not my question. My question was about the documentation of this demonstration. There is no consistency to the document, to the photography, and the documentation done by camera in your demonstration, is there? I don't totally agree with that statement, no. Okay. You are saying that this series of photographs, the 126 series, is consistent with the 125 series? In what we're trying to show, yes. Well, that sort of depends on what you are trying to show, doesn't it? Yes. I can choose if I want to show that an indicted person is guilty and I want to show that my opinion is correct. I can pick and choose what to photograph, can't I? In this instance, since I didn't direct the photographer, I didn't choose. Of course, Officer Maine can pick and choose, can't he? I guess he can. And on 55, 56, and 57, apparently there is no attempt made or no effort made to photograph the knife. That is correct. All right. At this point, we're getting a little long into the testimony, and they actually move on to begin to talking about the actual photography, where the picture should be taken, and so forth. So that's getting into kind of a different topic than what we've been covering. So I'm going to end this one here, and we will pick right back up where we left off on this one in the next episode, which will be Tom Bevel, number 5. Okay, so what did we learn in this episode? Well, Mr. Mosty of the defense team, he begins with making a point to let the jury know that Mr. Bevel didn't really take any notes on what he did out there at the Routier home when he did his tests. He was asked about the photos that were taken out there and said that he didn't have them and essentially pushed off the responsibility of those photos to someone else, as he did in the previous episode when he's being questioned by the prosecution. We also learned that Bevel has testified in around 200 different cases up to this point in his career. He was shown photographs and said that a variety of people explained what these photographs were. They were photographs of the crime scene. But most of the explanations came from Mr. Davis, the prosecutor. He was then asked by Mr. Mosty if Officer Main, the man who took the photographs at the crime scene initially, was at the meetings when they were looking at the photos. And he said that he was not. If you remember, Officer Main was one of the Rowlett police officers who also had moved evidence inside the home in order to take photographs of the crime scene. He is also one of the officers who gathered evidence at the scene and who picked up 2 bloody towels in the hallway and threw them in the same bag, saying, quote, "If the items are found together, they belong together." Bevel evidently had received a large binder with a bunch of information in it, and he had decided to take this back to his hotel room on the night of September 11th of 1996. And along with this, he took a manila envelope that had photographs in it, and he read through all these documents and looked at these pictures that evening. At no point did he take any notes, but evidently the next morning he just told Mr. Davis which sections he wanted copies of, and then he headed back to Oklahoma where these items were then sent to him. You'll also notice that, and I'm sure you did, that during this entire episode, Bevel does not want his work to be considered quote unquote experiments. Yet early on in this particular episode, he refers to his work as quote, doing experimentation. So I found that kind of interesting. After Mosty has Bevel come down from the stand and do a demonstration with the vacuum, he pays attention to where Bevel placed his hand on the vacuum handle when he did this demonstration. And when Bevel goes back to the stand, Mr. Mosty wants the record to reflect where he placed his hand. And the court then says, well, I think the jury saw where he put his hand. In other words, the judge doesn't believe that this detail is necessary to add to the official trial transcripts, which would have happened had the record, quote unquote, reflected that, and which can be helpful in looking back at the case or even on appeal. But the judge leaves it to the jury to remember this detail, and it is not included in the official trial transcripts. Now, Mosty does point out that the main smear that was seen on the vacuum handle was on the right-hand side. And I have a feeling that this will be important later on. It was kind of something that struck me as I was reading this. So when they get to talking about how Bevel performed his experiments or demonstrations, there's a lot of verbal talk in the transcript itself that says things like, drop it like that, or dropped it like this. And of course, we can't tell from the transcripts what he is doing, but I guess we can figure out that maybe he's holding the knife waist high and he's just letting it go. And of course, by the time that Bevel gets to the house to do these demonstrations, everything has been moved out of this house, including all the rugs that were in the kitchen and by the utility room door. But none of his demonstrations actually included dropping a knife on any of these rugs. There does come a point when Mr. Mosty is asking Bevel about his lack of note taking. And Bevel responds by saying that his demonstrations were just to act as visual aids as to his opinions. When he's asked if maybe the jury would find it more helpful if he had taken notes, he responds with something that isn't a yes or no answer. And when he's pressed to give a yes or no answer, Davis objects, the prosecution obviously, and says, quote, "Can the witness be allowed to answer the question?" And the court then says, "Let the witness answer the question and then move on." So Mr. Mosty then asks the question again, and instead of giving a yes or no answer like he requested, Bevel instead says, "I think the jury understands how I conducted those tests." But of course, the court isn't going to let Mosty ask his question again, even though he hasn't gotten a yes or no answer. Instead, the court says, "Thank you, next question." Then there's a little back and forth between the defense and the judge about them making sure that they don't ask him the same question again, even though they still have questions on the same topic. It gets a little testy. As the testimony wraps up, we have Mosty asking Bevel to compare some pictures taken to see if they match up. And of course, we have Officer Main, who took all the photos of the crime scene, initially taking these photos of Bevel's experiments, even though Officer Main wasn't directed by Bevel to take any specific type or style or placement of these photos. So then Mr. Mosty takes it a step further and basically says, look, if you're trying to prove somebody guilty, you can just pick and choose which photos to use, right? And at which point Bevel deflects this and says he didn't take the photos. It was Officer Main, which of course leads you to believe that since Main was taking the photos, he may have had an ulterior motive. And that's where we ended for this episode. There's still a lot of testimony to go regarding Mr. Bevel, and that will be coming up in Tom Bevel number 5. Thank you all so much for listening and for putting up with my terrible sounding voice today. Crossing my fingers that it gets better over the next couple of days. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the Beach House 34 YouTube channel so that you don't miss any episodes, or subscribe via your favorite podcast platform. Now, YouTube is by far the best way to stay updated and where you can also see any of the exhibits that I have access to. You can leave your comments there too, as I tend to go there the most often to read and respond to them. The link for YouTube is in the show notes, along with any information you might find helpful regarding today's episode. We will talk very soon. Bye for now.